San Francisco. Alec Pierce stays in Indianapolis. Malik Willis to Miami, just to name a few. And there's so many names on this list. We'll continue to keep an eye on more news. 6, 5, 4, 3. I'm ahead of the clock, but the new league year is official right now. All right, confetti. We got the confetti for you, Dan.
I actually like the new league year more than I like New Year's. So
that makes sense for you. We love ball
like
here. Okay, we're going to get into all of this, but we do have some breaking news. One of the best available free agents on the board, Adam Schefter, Kyler Murray. What do we know about him right now?
Well, moments ago, Laura, the Arizona Cardinals released Kyler Murray officially. With Murray now free, the Minnesota Vikings are considered the overwhelming favorite to sign him. One source said it would be a big upset if Kyler Murray did not wind up with the Minnesota Vikings. Kirk Cousins was as well. Another quarterback on the move here. The Falcons have moved on from Kirk Cousins. He becomes a free agent now, and we'll see how that one works out moving forward. But Kyler Murray released, Kirk Cousins released. Two quarterbacks hit the market. Kyler looks like he could be ticketed for Minnesota. We'll see what Cousins does. He's not in as much of a rush, but those are the two particular situations as we know them.
All right, Adam, as the news continues to fly around, we'll keep you here. You're here with us for the hour. We got Dan with us. We got Mina Kimes as well. And Mina, as you hear this news about Kyler Murray, it's what we expected. We're still, of course, expecting that he's tracking toward Minnesota. But what are your thoughts on Kyler?
Well, let's start here. Kyler Murray is a dramatic improvement over what we watched in Minnesota last season. I think the perception around him is that he's very streaky and that maybe he's fallen off from the highs earlier in his career. But look at this. These are Kyler's numbers, his statistical rankings 2024 through 2025. So these are the last 20 or so starts that he's played. He has been an above average quarterback in success rate, EPA per dropback, QBR. And then on the right, you have what Minnesota got from the quarterback position last season. And so my point here is we talk a lot about Kyler's upside, the floor he gives you as a quarterback in terms of playing on time and, just his ability to play efficient football. Now, Dan and I have talked about this. This is not an easy and obvious scheme fit with Kevin O'Connell. But to me, the opportunity here to upgrade is not just a challenge, but an opportunity for O'Connell in addition to Murray. Can you evolve your offense to suit the quarterback coming in? That's something I'd like to see because I do think he has a set of tools, and Dan, you can speak to this, that O'Connell can build around.
Yeah, so I think he's going to be in Minnesota. I think he's going to be their starting quarterback. And I would tell you, so when Drew Petzing, who's the play caller from Arizona, who's now the offensive coordinator in Detroit, but when he got to Arizona in 2023, one of the things that changed in really drastic way in comparison to Cliff Kingsbury, who was initially there, was much more under center and much more play action. So if you look at Minnesota and like Sam Darnold and how great Sam Darnold was there, it was because he was phenomenal operating the play action pass game. Kyler actually was really good early on in 2023, and I would tell you the early part of 2024 in the play action game. Me and I talked about it a ton, like, oh, finally, he's in an offense that really he's thriving in from a pass game perspective. If Kyler can get settled into that, he's probably a more talented playmaker than Sam Darnold was, certainly than Kirk Cousins and J.J. McCarthy were. And so can he do that consistently? Like, that's the question mark that I have. Can he get into that play action rhythm consistently in Minnesota, if that's the place?
Dan, something that's unique about Kyler is for a quarterback of his size, he will throw over the middle of the field. Totally. Often when we see with quarterbacks who are under 6 foot tall, they have trouble seeing the middle of the field. But of course, that'll be assisted by the fact if they roll him out more often, that allows him, to see things quite more clearly. And you saw that again. You made a great point there. Early in Arizona, he has that ability. We know that's what O'Connell wants to do. The middle of the field is such an important part of the Vikings offense. And I would say what differentiates him from J.J. McCarthy is he's able to throw those balls and layer them with touch. That is so important in this offense. Now, the QB designed run element, these are the things I think you want to see O'Connell build around that he has not really done so. I guess Josh Dobbs is the example you would go to. But Kyler is a different skill set in that regard. I'm very interested in watching it because I do think there's a real opportunity here for this Vikings offense to take a different step or to move in a different direction from what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, and the one thing I do think that would be probably the I guess sticking point would be it's an offense that just wants you to allow the play caller to star. I'll design the plays. I'll get the guys open. You make the throw. And that's why Sam was so great there. Kyler's a playmaker. And so walking that fine line of being the playmaker when needed rather than wanting to, I think will probably be where the biggest growth will have to come from for this, if it's Minnesota, to work the best.
To the points that you guys are making, Kyler Murray, top 10 in completions inside the numbers over his career.
Yeah.
I'm not sure people realize just how good he is at some of these things. And we'll keep an eye on whether or not he does end up in Minnesota. Now, when the clock struck 4 Eastern just a few minutes ago, all the deals that we've been talking about since Monday can officially be signed. It's a good reminder that getting pen to paper on these contracts feels more and more important than ever this year after what happened last night and just the unfolding of the Maxx Crosby deal falling apart as we bring Adam back in here. Adam, the Maxx Crosby trade deal in Baltimore was agreed to, but it was not finalized. Why did it end up ultimately falling apart?
Well, the move that was more surprising than the trade itself was the fact that the Baltimore Ravens decided not to pass him on the physical. And Maxx Crosby and his wife arrived in Baltimore. He went through a physical on Tuesday. The plan was to have a celebratory day, a dinner out that night. It never materialized. Doctors looked at his knee and had concerns. There were physicals done, MRIs done, and ultimately the Baltimore Ravens had the information and decided that they could not move forward with a deal that would give the Raiders 2 first-round draft picks. Now, Maxx Crosby's knee surgeon, Dr. Neil Elitrosh, pointed out that Maxx Crosby is exactly where he is supposed to be at this point in time from a significant knee injury that involved damage to the meniscus, bone, and cartilage. They still believe he'll be ready for opening day 2026, but it's going to take some time to get there first. Not a simple process. So in the interim, now Crosby reverts back to the Raiders. He was in their building today. They are taking calls from teams, but again, they wouldn't move him unless they got the asking price that they were seeking, which last time was at least 2 first-round draft picks. Whether there's a team out there willing to compensate them to that high a level, whether they're willing to budge off those demands, those requests, we'll see how this evolves. But for the time being, Maxx Crosby is once again a Las Vegas Raider.
Yeah, just a wild situation, right? There's no other way to look at this.
And
although
as for
you
Trey
can...
Hendrickson.
Oh, go ahead, Adam. Tell us more.
No, I didn't know whether you would team me up or I was supposed to just take myself there.
Keep
My apologies,
going. No,
Laura.
Adam,
Essentially,
go.
Trey Hendrickson, once the Maxx Crosby deal didn't get done, basically the Baltimore Ravens reached agreement with Trey Hendrickson on a 4-year, $112 million deal that could be worth up to $120 million. It's a situation where Trey Hendrickson had been talking to the Ravens, he'd been talking to the Commanders, he'd been talking to the Eagles, he'd been talking to the Buccaneers. There were a lot of options, a lot of things that came available here in the last 48 hours or so. Tough decision, but he was looking for stability. And now he stays in the AFC North where he will go up against his former team and his former quarterback, Joe Burrow, twice a year. The Ravens still have more moves to make, but they landed a big chess piece today in the form of Trey Hendrickson.
Excellent work, Adam. By the way, reminder to people, Adam's been breaking all this news. It's been a wild time for all of us as fans. I can't even imagine what Adam's been trying to manage on that end. Mina, I want to point this out before we talk through the Baltimore side of all this. I've spent some time talking today to Stefania Bell, our medical expert here at ESPN. She's pointed out that all these teams can conduct their own physicals, right? These players come to them. They get imaging done by those teams. It's up to the teams about their comfort level on these players. Take that for what you will with how you want to parse through this, but any issue on how Baltimore handled all of this?
I think it's really hard to know. There's so many unknowns here. It is not outside the realm of possibility that the Ravens looked at a player who's pushing 29, who's played more defensive snaps than any defensive lineman in football over the last 6 years, and saw something that concerned them. It's also not outside the realm of possibility that they got cold feet because they gave up so much to get him. To me, this is something where over time we'll probably find out what happened through Maxx Crosby and his play. If he returns and he looks great, I think it wouldn't be unreasonable to look at the Ravens with a little bit of a side eye. But if he does struggle, if it takes him a while to get back to health, if he's not the same moving forward, I think we'll look back at this decision and say, yeah, the Ravens were right. So I guess to answer your question, to go back to it, for me, it's still kind of an incomplete. I think there's a lot left to be determined.
Yeah, it looks weird. It looks odd. There's a lot of question marks attached to it. That doesn't mean it was malicious in intent. That doesn't mean it lacks integrity. They were allowed to make the decision because of the time frame and how the NFL operates, the legal tampering period, and just recently when the new league year starts. They're in the right, I guess, legal process of going about having the opportunity to change their minds. I feel for Max because now there's a giant cloud and question mark of what's his future going to look like. I also just fall under the belief that this is an amazing opportunity for other organizations that might believe.
You said the Eagles earlier?
Yeah, Philadelphia, Washington, the Bears, the Rams, the Bills, that just, I continue to hear this statement. They weren't comfortable with the knee given what the compensation was going to be. So if the compensation changes, does that make other teams more comfortable with the knee and the long-term prognosis health-wise of that knee?
Yeah, Mina, when you think of some of those teams that Dan laid out there, anybody sound attractive to you as maybe getting, I don't want to call it a bargain for Maxx Crosby, but based on what it was before, it'll seem like a bargain.
Yeah, I think it's going to be diminished value, not just because of, the potential of an injury or their own valuation, but because there are fewer bidders now than there would have been at the beginning of free agency, most likely. Dan mentioned some of the teams that I'd be intrigued by. I'll throw out another one, New England. They're picking 31st in the draft, of course, in the first round, but they still have a ton of cap space, and I think a pretty significant need in terms of an edge rusher. So, that's a team that's been linked as maybe a potential trade target for A.J. Brown. We'll see if that has any legs. But if not, I would be very comfortable, if I'm New England, using that 31st overall pick to go after Maxx Crosby.
Yeah, MK, I think we were talking about it. It comes down to, if you're the Raiders and you're just 24 hours removed from the emotion of it, where do you stand on what are you willing to accept? Or do you want to play the long game and think that his value is going to get back to where it was? Or it's going to increase? Do you want to wait closer to the draft? Are you willing to try to hold on and have him play for the Raiders this year? But then there's also that opposite risk of what happens if, the value takes a drastic decrease. And I think if you're the Raiders, you just have to be having those intense conversations. If I were them, I'm trying to take the best I can right now and understanding it's not going to be the best. And I think, or what it was. And I think if you're other teams, like, hey, what are we willing to maybe be a little bit more aggressive on, knowing that we're going to get a player that if we are right, gosh, we're going to get an absolute steal here.
Yeah, and a very motivated steal, right? Because you bet Maxx Crosby wants to come back and prove that the Ravens screwed up here. The funny thing about the Raiders is, although their leverage has decreased somewhat because it's like later 2 days into free agency, but you understand, right? They still maintain, I think, a decent amount of leverage because they have so much damn money. This is not a team that desperately needs to move off of Maxx Crosby, even though they made a ton of signings in free agency. They had a ton of money. With Crosby back on the books, they still have cap space, not just this year, but next year as well, over $100 million. This is what happens when you have a roster that desperately needs additions, that doesn't have players outside of Bowers and who need to be extended, and a quarterback coming in on a rookie contract. You do have money to play with. So I think, to your point, that's something the Raiders have to consider here as well. Yes, you're listening to trade offers. Yes, you're considering another first-round pick package. But if they're not attractive at all, I would seriously consider retaining him if I'm Las Vegas, because you can afford it.
Yeah, a reminder, too, on Crosby's contract. It's not like he's some sort of rental. I mean, he's signed through 2029 in the next 4 years, right, with $59 million in guaranteed money over the next 2. But when it comes to his production on the field, and I realize we got to see him go back out there and do it again, the expectations are that he can. Crosby was doing this solo, 69.5 career sacks since 2019. Yeah. No other Raider had 15 in that 7-year span.
I mean, if you're the Raiders, if we're being honest, you don't necessarily want to be great this year. So,
okay.
Because you want higher picks in 2027, if we're being honest, we're building.
Well, Dan, I mean, when you see the other names that were on that list that we just had on the screen, they've gotten some big names there. Sure. They got the center in Linderbaum. I mean, what do you think about some of the signings that they've made here?
They've had a great offseason so far. I mean, I love Linderbaum because of the young quarterback. I think Jalen Naylor and the speed, if you've watched Mendoza, the best pass he throws is the deep ball, the go ball, or the back shoulder. So speedster there. I also like the fact that we're building a defense for him, too. Yeah. The best thing you can give a young quarterback, good defense.
All right, so we'll talk about the other side of this with Trey Hendrick agreed to. Sheffy, take us through some of the top agreements. Let's start with the new home for Mike Evans. I don't hear Adam. Do you guys hear
Yeah,
Adam?
Laura, Mike Evans
There he
goes out
is.
west, coast to coast, from Tampa to San Francisco, where he becomes the newest target for Brock. He becomes the newest target for Brock, going coast to coast the entire time. So this is a player the 49ers wanted, targeted, and it was a very difficult divorce from Tampa. Emotional for a player that meant so much to that organization. But in the end, Mike Evans opted to go across the country. Meanwhile, Alec Pierce stays right in Indianapolis, and it's a situation where he gets a big new deal from the Indianapolis Colts. 4 years, $116 million was a priority for the Indianapolis Colts, and now they've made that happen. And to keep him in Indianapolis, big move, and he stays there, of course, with Daniel Jones. Kenneth Walker, the Super Bowl MVP, goes to the Kansas City Chiefs, where he will upgrade their rushing attack, become a big-time weapon in the Kansas City Chiefs offense. They've been looking to upgrade that run game, and obviously Kenneth Walker on a 3-year deal absolutely should be able to do that, vital to the Seahawks' postseason success, and now he will become a focal point of the Kansas City Chiefs offense. Speaking of big changes, the Miami Dolphins have brought in Malik Willis, the former Green Bay Packers quarterback, who reunites with Jeff Hafley, the Dolphins head coach, and John Eric Sullivan, the new general manager there in Miami. The Green Bay trio takes up residence down south. It's a good situation for them to have. Malik Willis lands the deal. He becomes the quarterback. They move on from Tua Tagovailoa, who goes to Atlanta, and the Dolphins begin a new era with a new quarterback.
I love it. Adam, by the way, I got to apologize. We've had some clunky moments, you and me, so far this show. It's on me. It's my fault. We're having a couple
way to take some
technical
accountability,
things.
Reddy. Way to
It's
take some
on me. I own this. This is not on Adam. More quarterback news. Let's see if we can do this one right.
I'm all good, Laura. You don't make mistakes. You
No,
don't make mistakes.
Well, some of this out of my control, but I'm still going to own it. All right. Coming up, let's talk about Kyler Murray, as that just happened right when we started our show. What's the latest there?
Kyler Murray was released moments ago from the Arizona Cardinals. He now is the overwhelming favorite to go to the Minnesota Vikings and join that quarterback room. Now that the Arizona Cardinals are going to take the veteran minimum for work where he wants. It'll be important for him to find a new home, but there is absolutely mutual interest between he and the Vikings. Kirk Cousins also set free moments ago. He's owed $10 million from the Falcons this upcoming season. He now is a free agent. He'll be patient, and it's a situation where he is a free agent to be out there. He can go where he wants. Laura, my phone is blowing up here. It will not stop.
Hey,
it's the
all
start
right.
of the new league year. I can't even keep up right now. Okay, Kirk Cousins is a free agent at this point in time, and Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes, gets a lot of dimes right now from the Indianapolis Colts. Lands a 2-year, $88 million extension to rejoin Alec Pierce in a deal that's worth up to $100 million. As we said, the Colts wanted to keep Jones. They wanted to keep Pierce. They get both men done. Both are staying in Indianapolis, and the Colts are hoping to get back to where Daniel Jones was healthy last year and a top quarterback in this league.
Adam, take a breather. Get all that figured out on your
Well
phone.
done.
There's a
Well
lot
done.
flying around right now. You're the best in the business. We appreciate you. We're coming back to you in just a little bit. New on NFL Live, speaking of Daniel Jones, he jumped on the Pat McAfee show just after the news broke. Here's what he said.
We'll keep checking the boxes, working with the guys here with the Colts, and feel good about that. So I'm planning on being back, and the goal is shooting for week 1. We got a special thing going, and working with this coaching staff, working with the guys in the locker room, and fire.
Mina, what do you make of this Jones deal?
You know, I think Chris Ballard, the GM of the Colts, handled this offseason pretty dang well, right? There was questions about whether he'd be able to keep both Pierce and Jones. He did that. Jones, I think, going from the transition tag to this contract, it makes a lot of sense. The transition tag's $38 million. It's a big contract number, but it's $50 million guaranteed. So really, you're adding $12 million-ish or so. And Jones is coming back from a brutal injury. Really protected their downside here because, candidly, they are able to move on after 1 year. Yes, these days, $50 million is a 1-year quarterback contract. And if not, you're paying him middle-class money. So I do think for the Colts, this was a smart way of doing it. And I think for Jones, it's a huge opportunity. If he does come back strong, if he does play well, he can hit the market again like Kirk Cousins. And so he's betting on himself. I get it. And I think if he is right, then he's due for another big payday.
Yeah, it's a fair contract for both parties. Daniel Jones isn't just coming back from an Achilles. This is a guy that over the last 4 or 5 years has dealt with some relatively significant injuries. And I think we saw that kind of play itself out in this contract negotiation. I mean, if you just go back to the start of his career, ankle, and even in the last 4 years, you're going neck, torn ACL, hairline fracture in his leg, and the Achilles. And so the Colts had to be conscious of, we love this guy. He's been great for our locker room. He revived his career for us. We want to reward that. We also want to pay him for what we think he's going to do. We'll also protect themselves a little bit to a guy that, unfortunately for him, over the last 4 years is like dealt with some pretty significant injuries. So I think, Athletes First and Brian Murphy, their reps did a nice job with making sure that Daniel got some good money, while also the Colts not just overly committing the future of their organization, at least at that position, 3-4 years down the road.
Yeah, I mean, they're looking at how he was before the injury last year. Outstanding through week 8, 78 total QBR, second in the league, barely behind
They're a top 5 team in football.
They look like they're going to win the Super Bowl. We were talking about it a ton. Okay, new on NFL Live from the Cowboys. Rashawn Gary has put pen to paper. He is officially a Cowboy. This is what Adam's been working on here, plus some other things. Former Dolphins defensive end Bradley Chubb reaching an agreement on a 3-year, $43.5 million deal worth up to $52.5 million, $29 million guaranteed with the Buffalo Bills. This, of course, per Eric Burkhart of Rock Nation Sports. Dan, what do you think about this? When you heard this, you had a really good reaction just a moment ago.
Yeah, I love this for Buffalo. We talked about it, him being one of the better free agents left available. I'm sure that Buffalo was in on the conversations with Trey Hendrickson. I'm sure they were initially trying to attract Maxx Crosby. Pivoting to Bradley Chubb. When Bradley Chubb's healthy, he's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, one of the more underrated ones in the NFL. His last 2 healthy seasons, 23 and 25, almost 20 sacks. Obviously, that's something that Buffalo needs. I just say this. Michael Hoyt, who was a free agent signing for them last year and started to play really well once he came back from suspension, got hurt. Once he gets healthy, if you take him and Chubb with Ed Oliver, that defensive line with some of their young pieces is going to be much improved than it has been in the past couple of years in Buffalo.
Yeah, good move by the Bills. All right, let's read and react to some of the other moves that have happened. How about the Philadelphia Eagles? The Eagles got Reek Woolen, that deal coming down today, but you see some of the losses. I mean, Jalen Phillips, Nakobe Dean, Reed Blankenship, they had to do that. Those guys were owed a lot of money. They held on to a few key players. But, Mina, when you think about what they've done, what do you make of the moves in Philly?
Like this a lot for both sides. So Philadelphia cornerback 2 was a glaring issue last season. I think they addressed it and upgraded in a big way. Reek Woolen does have some on-the-field lapses in terms of penalties. He's given up explosives, but he also is incredibly talented. He's sticky in coverage. He makes plays on the football. He's going to get targeted a lot. Wouldn't be surprised if he comes away with picks in this Eagles defense. And then for Reek, I think this one-year deal is really a prove-it year, right? He's 26 years old, 27 maybe. There's a chance for him to get a big contract coming out of this. Chose a great destination. So to me, this just makes a ton of sense, both sides.
Let's look at New York next, where John Harbaugh brought in some familiar faces, bringing in a lot of Ravens there on this Giants roster and some of the moves that they've made, which have been pretty attractive. Isaiah Likely is one that sticks out, and then you've got Patrick Ricard, which we know he's been key to that Ravens offense many times. You see some of the losses, Wan'Dale Robinson, Cordell Flott. But, Dan, when you look at what they've done there with the Giants, Joe Shane, the GM, but really more Harbaugh specific, what do you like?
Love it. One, Isaiah Likely, just a tight end that can win on a consistent basis. The fact that they improved their defense, it's been one of the worst run defenses in the NFL over the past couple of years. The information that you can gather, also keeping Illuminor at right tackle is a really big deal because this offensive line has to continue to improve. Those are 2 now bookends with Andrew Thomas at left tackle for this offense. I love everything what the Giants have done this offseason.
Yeah, it makes you excited to see what Jackson Dart can do, especially with Isaiah Likely. Let's go to San Francisco. They made a big splash, bringing in wideout Mike Evans, Tampa Bay's all-time leader in most receiving categories. They also add former Patriot Vidarian Lowe, Kendrick Bourne, Jordan Elliott on their way out of the Bay, but they won't be alone. New on NFL Live, this from our 49ers reporter Nick Wagner. With the new league year set to begin today, the 49ers plan to release wide receiver Brandon Ayuk. Could happen as soon as today, certainly soon either way. Washington, the most likely landing spot for Ayuk, probably on a 1-year prove-it deal. San Francisco expected to use a post-June 1 designation, which is why they had to wait until the new league year began. Ayuk, expendable now that Evans is in the mix there in San Francisco. Mina, did the Evans deal make sense to you with what they already have there and the offense that they want to run?
This was probably one of my 2 or 3 favorite deals of free agency so far. I mean, it is just perfect. It almost reminds me, this is sound a little weird, of when Derrick Henry joined the Ravens in terms of taking a great productive player and almost extending his career as he gets to Evans is 32 by putting him in the exact right destination. San Francisco, the need is obvious. Mike Evans, they have needed an X receiver since Ayuk's been missing for them. And you saw when Ayuk played with Brock Purdy how important that could be when you have a quarterback in Purdy who, unlike previous Niners quarterbacks, was willing to throw the ball deep, downfield, outside the numbers. Even if Evans has lost a step, last year he was obviously injured, in terms of his ability to separate, he is still going to be effective in this offense because of his contested catch ability, because of what he can do in the red zone. So to me, this is just a perfect fit, perfect player. It's a very team-friendly contract. I could not love it more.
They'll be a scoring machine in San Francisco. They have been one of the better scoring offenses in the NFL since Kyle Shanahan's become their head coach and play caller, and obviously Brock Purdy becoming their starting quarterback. But we're talking about, think of the Rams last year adding Davante Adams, and really where his impact was felt the most. It was down within that 5-yard line area, 7 touchdowns within 3 yards or less. Just scoring machine. And all the other things that it opened up for their run game or Matthew Stafford with their tight ends. That's what Mike Evans is going to be. Kyle Shanahan is going to take him, put him out there by himself like Sean McVay did Davante Adams, and he's going to say, if we get one-on-one, throw it to Mike. Because there's very few corners that can check him at the line in that short space with his frame. And if not, guess what? We'll design some stuff away for a McCaffrey or a Juszczyk or a Kittle. Scoring machine.
You know, you mentioned Davante Adams. It just made me smile because you guys know how much I hate the goal line fade. And a few years ago, I looked at all the data on goal line fades and how inefficient they were. But there were a few exceptions, and Mike Evans was one of those players where it was like, all right, if you're going to throw a goal line fade, if it's Mike Evans, you can go ahead and do it. Similar to what we saw Davante Adams. It's a great comparison with the Rams this year. He caught so many fades. Now you have a player in Evans who can do that as well. He's basically like a power forward down there. I agree with you. I think he's going to be such a nightmare in the red zone for San Francisco. Yeah. And by that, you have to worry about so much else when you're playing the San Francisco 49ers offense. He's going to get a ton of one-on-ones.
Yeah, the creativity, too. He's going to you don't have to be creative over here. I can be crazy creative over here.
I think Mina's going to like this number. Evans is the best in-zone target in the league over his career. 80 receptions on in-zone targets since 2014. No one else even has 70. So he's by far has been so good in that area of the field, the most important area of the field. Brandon Ayuk. So Nick Wagner, the report I was just reading there, he was saying that potentially the Commanders on a one-year deal. They obviously need some weapons for Jaden Daniels. What do you think about Ayuk trying to make a return to prominence in the league? It wasn't that long ago that he's signing this big deal and
Brandon Ayuk. Money. So he had the ACL 2 years ago, correct?
Yes.
So 2024, didn't play in the 2025 season. 2023, he was unbelievable. And so if you in Washington, if the likely landing spot, if you can get that version of Brandon Ayuk, you get a guy that probably is as good as Terry McLaurin. I mean, this guy, when he's healthy, he's one of the best sudden route runners, ball in his hands guys, strong body. I mean, in 2023, he had 75 catches for over 1,300 yards and 7 touchdowns. That was on the heels of back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. If you get that version of him, he's healthy and he's in a happy place, you get a true starting number 1 wide receiver in Washington.
Yeah, Adam, what does the market look like for Ayuk?
Well, first and foremost, I know it says that they're planning to release him, but I'd like to add on that they're not planning to release him anytime soon.
Okay.
They essentially have no guaranteed money left in his contract, so they can hold on to him for the time being. They could hold on to him in the draft and see if they could flip him for a pick at that point in time. They could hold on to him until June. They've paid him an awful lot of money. I don't think this is happening anytime soon, despite the report. And I think that they'll be holding on to him for a little while to see if there's any trade value at all. Washington does make a lot of sense. He played with Jaden Daniels in college. They're very close. Jaden Daniels, I'm sure, would love to play again with Brandon Ayuk, but I don't get the sense that the 49ers are in any rush to move on from Brandon Ayuk, even though we know eventually they will.
It's a really interesting dynamic. And Adam, I think, like, when hearing you say that, I thought to myself, yeah, a team should trade for him. I understand all of the murkiness, shall we say, over the last year. But Dan mentioned this. At his peak, he was a true number one. And there are a lot of teams around the NFL that could use his skill set. I'm not talking about meaningful draft capital. Obviously, I'm not talking about like a first or second or third round draft pick. But why not take a shot later in the draft if you're one of those teams and just see if he can return to form?
Okay, so not an immediate timeline here, something to look toward the draft or maybe even beyond that. By the way, Ayuk has not caught a touchdown at all since that 2023 season.
New England?
Ooh, whisper it. Say it a little louder. All right, coming up as free agency goes. Good job, Field. Mendoza, he's still at 1, but after that it gets interesting. Fields got edge rushers at 2 and 3 before the Titans take Carnell Tate for Cam Ward at 4. John Harbaugh gets top safety Caleb Downs at 5. There's a lot to talk through here and a lot of talk about Love landing in New Orleans or Kansas City. I don't think he makes it that far, but those two teams anyway, signing top 2 running backs in free agency in Kenneth Walker III and Travis Etienne. Dan, do you like where Field slotted the Notre Dame running back? Washington.
I do. Yeah, I do. I really do. I just don't think he's going to get there. I honestly believe Jeremiah Love is on the board at 3 for Arizona. Now, I think Arizona can do a lot of different things. I know Field has him slated for pass rusher. I could see them trading back. I just think he's the best player in the draft. If he doesn't get taken at 3, I absolutely think he's on the table at 4. With Brian Dable, offensive coordinator down in Tennessee, Cam Ward, the additions of some offensive talent they've made. You want to continue to do that. Robert Saleh with some of their free agent additions is building a defense there. I do understand the Carnell Tate addition. You're asking a guy that was really the 1B option in college to become the 1A option in the NFL, and I'm going to continue to go. I think he's on the table at 5 for the New York Giants.
Man. First, I'll start here. If we all like to watch the draft together, if Arizona, a team that is obviously rebuilding and doesn't have a quarterback, takes a running back in 3, you guys are going to have an ambulance on standby to like wheel me out of the hotel because I'll have a heart attack.
We both made the same sound when you said that.
I don't know. I've seen crazier things. Yeah, it was involuntary. You could talk me into the Titans, and here's why. Even though it goes against like what I think about team building, and I think they need an edge, I would love them to trade down and still take Tate. So much this year rides on Cam Ward and his development that I think you can justify over maybe investing in some improvement on the offense. I agree with Dan about Love and where he is in the draft. And I would love for them, no pun intended, to give Ward more help. I do not love, we're going to do this live.
It's hard.
I do not particularly feel that this wide receiver room is complete. Right now, their number 1 is Wan'Dale Robinson, who's like 5'8". They desperately need to continue adding there. But Jeremiah Love is complete. He is a receiver himself. He helps a lot of elements of the offense. So you could talk me into it, I think, even if I'm not sure it's the wisest decision from a team-building perspective.
I don't disagree from the team-building perspective. It's early in Arizona, Tennessee, and probably New York. I just think when you're one of those teams with these young quarterbacks, Arizona doesn't have necessarily a young one. They will in 2027. Young quarterbacks, you're looking at this tailback that's a dynamic weapon. And I'll add with Washington in that. I think the way that we've seen the NFL evolve offensive football-wise than it was 5 or 6 years ago, drafting these guys early isn't as extreme as it was 8 years ago.
I would not be shocked, too, if we see some team try to trade up and get him, which means you maybe would have to get to 3, right?
Yeah.
You'd have to get you'd have to get ahead of the Titans at 4, so you'd have to get to 3 to do it.
Yeah, depending on the information you gather, for sure.
All right, new on NFL Live. I like what
Murray
I just
and
put
Love
out
would be
there.
great.
Ooh. Okay, Kansas City Chiefs, maybe they would do it, but let's talk about this. Second biggest Kelsey news of the week. Sources confirming that Donna Kelsey's youngest son is returning to the Chiefs for his 14th season in the NFL. Of course,